The dome taught him everything the factions had spent 1,000 years trying to forget. It did not do so gently. Kofi's hand was still on the panel when the walls disappeared. Not the physical walls those remained, obsidian and patient and carved with angular script. But the chamber itself unfolded around him like a fist opening, and suddenly he was standing in a place that was not the dome. A vast savanna stretched in every direction, golden grass rippling under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The air smelled of turned earth and something older wet stone, mineral sharp, the way the deepest tunnels in the depths smelled after a ceiling collapse. Except this was not collapse, this was creation. Figures moved across the savanna. They were not human, not exactly. They had the shape of people, the way a river has the shape of its banks temporarily, contingently, because the thing inside needed a boundary to press against. Their skin was the color of laterite clay, and where they walked, the grass grew thicker, the soil darkened, and thin threads of golden light stitched themselves into the earth behind their footsteps like roots racing to keep up with a tree that was already walking. Zagele, the dome said. The word arrived in his understanding with the heft of something sacred, the woven ones. Kofi watched them work. They did not build. They wove, fingers pressing into the air as though it were wet cloth, pulling filaments of light from their own bodies and threading them into the ground, into the trees, into the spaces between things where ordinary people saw nothing but emptiness. The root lines formed beneath his feet. He felt them vibration through his soles, warmth climbing his ankles, the hum of a network stitching itself together, with the inevitability of a heartbeat finding its rhythm. One of the Zagale turned and looked directly at him. The face was ancient, not old the way skin gets old, with wrinkles and spots and the slow collapse of tissue. Ancient the way bedrock is ancient, compressed, patient, bearing the weight of everything above it without complaint, because complaining requires the belief that the weight might be removed. The eyes were amber, the same amber as the dome's light. They saw him, and they were not surprised. Then the vision shifted. Years collapsed like tunnels caving in. The golden savanna remained, but now there were others on it, people. Ordinary, human, mortal people, watching the Zagale with the particular hunger that Kofi recognized instantly because he had lived inside it for 14 months. The hunger of someone who sees abundance and calculates what portion they can carry away.
So they came as students,
Kofi said aloud. His voice was strange here, flat, absorbed by the vision grass, swallowed by the open sky.
and left as thieves.
The dome did not correct him. The vision showed him instead. The Zagale, patient as the stone they resembled, teaching. The Tindana receiving root-line communion. Kofi watched a woman press her palms to the earth and gasp as the network's hum entered her bones. The chiefs receiving enskinment, a man kneeling while golden threads wrapped his shoulders like a mantle. The Fugu weavers receiving the encoding art, hands moving on a loom that was not a loom, pulling patterns from light. The Ashvale order receiving shadow, binding a young woman's shadow, lifting from the ground, and standing beside her like a second self. Each faction received a fragment. Each fragment was given with the same instruction, and Kofi heard it the way the original recipients must have heard it, resonating in the chest like a second heartbeat. Maintain this piece. Respect its connections. You hold part of a whole.
And they didn't listen.
Kofi said, not a question. The vision accelerated. Walls went up, not stone walls, not physical barriers, but something worse. Rituals, hierarchies, origin stories that began with,
Our ancestors discovered.
instead of,
We were given.
the threads connecting the fragments thinned, frayed, snapped. The root lines, designed to flow between all things, were dammed and redirected. The enskinment, designed to distribute authority, was hoarded. The encoding, designed to transmit freely, was classified. The shadow binding, designed to sense the whole, was weaponized for surveillance of the parts. Kofi's hands were shaking, not from the cold this time, from anger, a hot, practical anger that tasted like copper at the back of his throat. He knew this pattern. He had lived inside this pattern. The factions had not just stolen power from the Zagale. They had done what every institution does when it steals something. They had rewritten the story so the theft looked like a founding.
They are scavengers.
He said, and the word came out bitter because he was one too. And he knew the difference between scavenging to survive and scavenging to build an empire.
They scavenged from something bigger and called it heritage.
The dome pulsed. The amber light flickered once, twice, and Kofi felt a sharp spike of pain behind his left eye, brief and blinding, like a needle pressed through the socket. His nose began to bleed. A single warm thread tracking down his upper lip, tasting of iron and salt. The dome was not done with him, and the lessons had weight. The Zagale watched the fragmentation from below. The vision plunged. Suddenly, Kofi was underground, not in the depths as he knew them, but in a space beneath the depths, a place of sealed stone and crystallized silence where the Zagale had retreated when the factions severed their connections. They could not intervene. They were the system. If they tore themselves free to correct the theft, the root lines would die, the enskinment bonds would dissolve, the shadow bindings would dissipate. They would destroy the thing they were trying to save.
So they sealed themselves in.
Kofi whispered.
They went asleep and trusted the factions to grow up.
He was standing in what felt like a cathedral of compressed stone, watching amber lights dim one by one as the Zagale withdrew their active consciousness from the surface. The last light was the one directly below where the dome now stood. It dimmed. It did not go out. It waited.
They've been waiting for someone to come back.
Kofi said. The vision released him. He was on the dome floor again, on his hands and knees, blood dripping from his nose onto the warm obsidian. His stomach clenched not nausea, but hunger. He had not eaten since. He could not remember. The mushrooms. The pale, tasteless mushrooms from the water seeps. How long ago? Hours, days. His body was counting debts his mind had been too occupied to notice. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and left a dark smear across his knuckles.
Show me the corruption,
he said. The dome obliged, but differently this time. Instead of a vision, it pulled him into diagnosis. The inscriptions on the walls rearranged themselves into a map the system's current state rendered as a body in crisis. Kofi had to trace the pathology himself, following the blackened threads through the golden network with his finger pressed to the wall.
Here,
he said, touching a node where the enskinment pattern had been inverted.
Something rewrote this. It's pulling power inward instead of distributing it outward.
He traced the black thread further. It was poisoning the root line's toxin flowing downward through connections the factions had forgotten existed.
Like sewage in a water system.
He muttered.
You poison the well, everything downstream dies.
But the dome made him work for the full picture. When he traced the wrong connection following a thread that looked corrupted, but was only damaged from age, the wall went cold under his fingers, and the inscriptions dimmed.
No, not that one.
He pulled his hand back, reconsidered. The scavenger's eye. When you pick through wreckage, you learn to see which breaks are fresh and which are old. Old damage has dust in the cracks. New damage has sharp edges. He found the fresh edges, followed them. The Fugu encoding system was disrupting patterns, firing erratically, a master weaver killed by the strain of encoding an emergency message. The shadow bindings were destabilizing awakening in rejected candidates, acting with independent intent. The system was breaking, fragment by fragment, and the Zagale forced awake beneath their sealed nodes were filtering contamination they had never been designed to handle at this volume. Kofi's headache was a living thing now, pulsing behind both eyes, and his vision kept blurring at the edges. The dome's warmth, which had been almost comforting, was becoming oppressive. Too much heat, like standing too close to a forge. His empty stomach twisted. The dome showed him 4 points of crisis on the surface, 4 simultaneous failures connected by the invisible architecture of a system the factions had fragmented and a single corrupted actor was now exploiting. A shadow binding straining north toward Ironhaven. A grove going silent. A dead woman's loom weaving itself. And here, in the depths, a sealed chamber opening.
The last candidate.
Kofi said.
Who was the last candidate?
The inscriptions reformed. The name landed in his understanding like a stone dropped into still water. The previous candidate was Zara, earth-bonded, ruler of Ironhaven. She completed the protocol 43 years ago and chose to seal it. Kofi sat back on his heels. Blood was drying on his upper lip. His hands trembled against his thighs. Pogna Zara, the most powerful living figure in the faction system. She had stood in this dome, on this floor, in this amber light. She had learned everything: the theft, the Zagale's sacrifice, the system's fragile unity. She had completed the protocol. She had been given the ability to reunify the fragments. And she had locked the door and walked away. The candidate, Zara, judged that the factions had built civilizations around the stolen fragments. Reunification would require dismantling those civilizations. The candidate chose preservation over restoration. Kofi stood up. His knee protested a dull grind, bone on bone, and he let it. He needed to stand for this.
She was afraid,
He said, and his voice was not a whisper this time. It was flat, hard, the voice of a man who had eaten garbage for 14 months while the most powerful woman in the territories sat on a truth that could have changed everything.
She had the power to fix it, and she chose comfort. She chose the system that made her powerful over the system that made everything work.
His hands were fists at his sides. The anger was not hot anymore. It was cold and precise, the anger of someone who has been hungry long enough to know exactly who hoards the food.
I've been living in the depths,
He said to the dome, to Zara's absent ghost, to the warm amber light.
eating rats, sleeping in rubble, because the factions decided I wasn't good enough, and she could have torn down the walls that put me there. She could have torn down all of it, and she didn't, because it would have been hard.
The dome waited. It did not defend Zara. It did not condemn her. The candidate, Zara's decision, delayed the system's failure by 43 years. The corruption began 11 months ago. The system is now in terminal decline.
How long?
The Damba alignment occurs in 5 days. If the corruption is amplified by the alignment, the system will pass the point of no return. The Zagale will die. All magic in the territories will fail within 1 generation. 5 days. Kofi closed his eyes. 5 days to learn what Zara had taken 14 months to complete.
Is there a faster path?
The dome paused. When it resumed, the comprehension carried a weight that Kofi could only read as warning. The emergency protocol exists. IT compresses the full training into 5 days. The margin between successful completion and candidate death is narrow.
How narrow?
12% survival rate. The number sat in the air between them. Kofi let it sit. He did not laugh this time. He was past laughing. He was in the place beyond laughing, the place where the numbers are so absurd that the only honest response is to do the arithmetic. 12%, 1 in 8, roughly. He had survived worse odds in the depths: the tunnel collapse in month 3, the faction patrol in month 9, the week in month 11 when his water source dried up and he had to dig through collapsed stone with his bare hands to find another. None of those had been calculated risks. They had been the ordinary mathematics of being disposable. But this was different. This was a choice, not survival by reflex but death by decision. He thought about what he wanted to live for. The question surprised him not because it was hard, but because the answer came so fast. He did not want to live for anything specific. He wanted to live because he had spent 14 months being told he was not worth keeping alive, and his continued existence was the only argument he had left. That was not enough, not for 12%. He thought harder. The Zagale, sleeping beneath their sealed nodes, maintaining a system the factions had stolen and a corrupted man was now killing. The root lines dying. The shadow bindings going wild. The encoding system screaming through dead hands. 4 crises, 5 days, and a woman who had decided 43 years ago that saving the world was too expensive.
Begin.
He said. The previous candidate who chose the emergency path was Zara. She survived. She was also marginal.
I know you keep telling me that. Begin.
The dome began. The inscriptions blazed. The amber light intensified until the chamber was a furnace of gold, and the warm floor beneath Kofi's hands began to vibrate with the first frequency of the emergency protocol, not a sound, but a pressure. Not a pressure, but a rearrangement. Something reached into the center of his bones and said, "You have chosen the path that kills 12 out of 13 who walk it. You will not sleep for 5 days. You will not eat. You will not rest. You will learn or you will die, and the system does not have enough time left to mourn you if you fail." His nose bled freely now, both nostrils and the taste of blood filled his mouth hot copper, the taste of a body being asked for more than it was built to give. His vision doubled. The dome walls rippled. And the first lesson of the emergency protocol entered his mind like a blade entering water clean, precise, and irreversible. Kofi gripped the panel with both hands. His knuckles whitened. His empty stomach heaved against nothing. He held on,